Alright YouTube, what is up? In today's video I'm going to be taking you guys into what it was like going through a 72-hour water fast. Mind you, I have never fasted before that point, and so it was pretty crazy. I think some of the effects may have been heightened because it was my first fast. Nonetheless though, it was a life-changing experience to say the least going through that fast. And so I want to explain to you guys exactly why. And the first thing that I want to explain is why most people would probably want to fast, why I wanted to fast in the first place, and that was to lose weight. When I started this fast, I was weighing in at 172. By the end of this fast, I was weighing down to 165. So I had lost 7 pounds during 3 days, which was incredible. And all of that fat that I lost was fat. It was not muscle. I kept a lot of the muscle. I kept the strength that I had in the gym. I didn't lose any of that. I just lost the fat around my stomach, which was amazing. And so that was the first thing I got from the fast. And the reason that you lose fat, as the fat is the first thing to go when you fast, is because fat is the first fat to go is going to be the fat that your liver can first access when it needs energy. So the way that the fasts work and why they're so effective, and I want to bring you into what actually happens to your body when you fast, is that fats are the first to go and protein is protected. And here's why. So when you eat, you are consuming one of 3 macronutrients: proteins, fats, or sugars. When you eat sugars, those are turned into, or when you eat carbs, which are sugars, those are turned into glucose. What glucose does is it spikes your blood sugar, and insulin is secreted from the pancreas to regulate your blood sugar. What insulin does is insulin grabs the glucose that's in your blood and it pushes it into the cells. What glucose is fundamentally is a unit, that it is a molecule that is used by mitochondria to go through the Krebs cycle, and then the Krebs cycle allows it to go through the electron transport chain to create ATP. What is ATP, you may be asked? ATP is potential energy that is then used as energy when it goes through hydrolysis and releases a phosphate to create ADP. That process releases energy. So if you've ever been curious, like, how do all my cells continue to function? What actually fuels them? Why is mitochondria the powerhouse of the cell? It's because it aids glucose in going through the process of creating ATP, and ATP is hydrolyzed to release energy. As simple as that. So essentially you have this glucose, and when you eat, your blood sugar rises, your insulin regulates your blood sugar, then your insulin decreases after about 4 to 6 hours after eating, depending on how big your meal was. And then your blood sugar regulates. It's at its normal blood sugar. It's not spiked at all. But eventually now, if after you haven't eaten for 6 hours, what happens is your blood sugar starts to drop. And so your liver actually has what's called glycogen stores, and it breaks down glycogen into glucose, releasing more glucose into your bloodstream. So then your bloodstream actually goes back up. Your cells are able to function, they're getting the glucose they need, and that's what happens. Glycogen is the second option once you haven't eaten. The first option is food. Once you haven't eaten in a while, it starts happening to glycogen. But how long until your glycogen stores are depleted? That usually takes about 14 to 16 hours, and once they're depleted, that's when you really start getting into the cool stuff and the real benefits of the fast. So about 14, 16 hours after you eat, your glycogen stores are empty. Your body needs to start using those fats as energy. That's what fats are, right? They're just stored energy that are supposed to be used once your glucose has been used up. And so Fats, specifically stored as triglycerides, are broken down. Triglycerides meaning 3 glycerols, and these 3 glycerols are turned into glucose. So you start digging into triglycerides, you do have a little bit of glucose that comes about from that. But the main thing that comes about from these triglycerides are these fatty acids that are used as the new form of energy that isn't glucose. So what happens to these fatty acids, you may ask? Well, they are brought into the mitochondria to where they are broken down into acetyl-CoA. Now, this molecule, acetyl-CoA, what it essentially does is when you don't eat for a while, acetyl-CoA is usually used in the Krebs cycle to yield ATP with glucose, and more specifically with oxaloacetate, OAA, oxaloacetate. But when you don't eat sugars for a while, there's no OAA, so you just have a ton of acetyl-CoA that doesn't know what to do. And what your body does with an abundance of acetyl-CoA is it starts turning it into ketones. Now, ketones are what really makes the fast so incredible. The 2 main ketones at work are acetoacetate, and what 75% of those ketones are beta-hydroxybutyrate, BHBs. So what is BHB, you may ask? Well, BHB is a miracle worker. It is the new form of energy that your body gets when you are on a fast. And so it's a much cleaner, more like a cleaner form of energy. What this BHB does is it basically does the same thing as glucose. It yields ATP. It is the new form of ATP, so it is sent around the body from the bloodstream into cells to keep those cells functioning, to give you energy. But what's crazy is that 1 unit of BHB yields 30% more ATP than glucose. It is much more efficient. So a lot of people think, well, don't you start, like, if you haven't eaten in so long, 18 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, don't you just feel absolutely depleted? And the short answer is no. You actually feel more energized, and that's for a few reasons. But actually, the reason you feel more energized is because your body is running off of ketones, a more efficient form of energy. The second benefit, which is absolutely crazy that I experienced, and it's not having to do with just my stomach fat being gone. That the stomach fat is what helped produce these ketones, but the second major takeaway that I got from this fast was insane godlike mental clarity. Like, not in a blasphemous way, but I feel like I entered the most locked in state of mind that I have ever been in my entire life. I've never taken Adderall, but I'm assuming if I did, it would probably feel like what I felt like when I was on this fast and I had gotten to a point where ketones were the main form of energy, because holy cow, I felt so locked in. So what is the reason that I felt so locked in? Well, the first one is that when you fast, your body actually, this BHB, beta-hydroxybutyrate, also is used not just as the energy, but it also has some crazy effects as a signaling molecule. So when it goes into your brain, it actually decreases and it inhibits inflammasomes from working on your brain. What do inflammasomes do, you might ask? Well, it's in the name. They inflame the brain. They inflammate the brain. So your brain, when it's inflamed, it starts feeling, that's what mental fog is. That's what you feel when you have anxiety, when you don't know what to do. I feel like anxiety is really just a lack of clarity and a confusion with how to move forward and execute, and fears that something may happen that is outside of your control. What BHB does is it inhibits inflammasomes, so your brain is much less inflamed, that mental fog goes away, and it is replaced with clarity. You know exactly what you want, you know how you want to execute it, you know exactly how to get from point A to point B, and it's really that helps you get into what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi The forefather of flow state. That's what he talks about when he talks about getting into a state of flow and deep work. I remember one time it was, 10, I think it was like 10 or 11 p.m. It was on the second day of this fast, and I felt extremely restless. Like, that is one thing that people don't talk about enough when you are on a fast, but you feel restless because I think there's something in food that helps you go to sleep. I haven't looked deeply into that, but I'm pretty sure they help you go to sleep. And without that food, I was feeling pretty restless, which is a good thing. I was like locked in, but at the same time, I couldn't go to sleep. And so I remember one time I was trying to go to sleep at 10 and I couldn't. And all I could think about was I was trying to figure out what is the Krebs cycle, how does glucose turn into ATP, and so I just sat in my bed for like, it really just flew by like that, but it was 2 hours, and I was just basically looking into the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain, which creates ATP and our energy, and so that was pretty interesting, but there's just like random states that you can really tap into of flow while your body is running on ketones. It's pretty astounding. I mean, I was able to have just like really long conversations with people. I felt super tuned in. I felt like my empathy had increased. My craving for social connection increased during this time. And I tend to be someone who is kind of like socially anxious. I do have self-diagnosed anxiety sometimes, and having that clarity and being in a state of mind that I really could assess my fears and like irrationalities in my mind was just absolutely awesome, and it allowed me to just feel a lot more comfortable and just feel a lot more fulfilled actually looking into things that I really like. And so that was pretty cool during that 3-day fast. One thing, and I want to dispel a myth that you lose muscle if you fast. A lot of people are afraid to fast because they're afraid they lose muscle. This is a crazy statistic. So the average male after 24 hours of fasting found that the average male, their human growth hormone was up 2,000% for the average male. That means it, could be higher for you. And it was up around like 800 to 1,300 in that range for females as well, their HGH. And what HGH does, it's not just like a steroid that makes you jacked and makes your muscles big. It does do that. It does make your muscles bigger, but it's also a protective hormone. What it does is it signals to your brain, hey, we need to protect our muscle. That is the most important thing at this time. So it signals your body to protect muscle, and it also signals your body to start digging into the fat. It says keep digging into that fat as the form of energy because our muscles are the last thing that we're eating. So you start getting a lot leaner. If you see from when I started the fast to when I ended the fast, I lost all of the weight that I lost came either from my face or from my stomach / love handles and midsection. And the reason being is the most accessible fat to your liver, which is kind of like the control system in where our energy comes from. The first thing that it digs into is visceral fat. So visceral fat is that fat around your stomach. So that's the first thing that it digs into. So yeah, there were amazing physical benefits, the psychological benefits. Another thing that BHB does not just inflammate your brain or de-inflammate it or uninflammate it. I don't know the word for that, but it doesn't just create mental clarity, it also enhances neuroplasticity and memory. So, like I said, BHB is a signaling molecule that increases brain-derived neurotropic factor. And what BDNP, brain-derived neurotropic factor, does is it increases creativity and neuroplasticity. BDNP is extremely active when people are on psychedelics because their neuroplasticity is through the roofs. It is extremely I would say therapeutic, as psychedelics are increasingly becoming something that are used in therapy worldwide, and the reason being is because it allows you to confront irrationalities in your mind. It allows you to create more neuronal connections, aka increase neuroplasticity, and it also really sharpens your memory. Like, it's crazy the things I was able to recall and retain during this fast, because I feel like my memory was just kind of through the roof. So my mind was really working. It was super clear. Seriously, my brain's form of Adderall. And so that's what another thing that ketones and you running on ketones can do for your body. And I remember my first 2 days, I was just completely locked in. And then the third day was a little bit different. When I reached that 48 to 72 hour mark, I just felt my brain was quiet. Felt clear. I felt like I knew how to execute. I didn't feel like I had a ton of energy necessarily. Like, I was like amped to do anything. Like, I was like that same type of like caffeinated energy I was feeling the first 2 days. My mind just felt extremely calm, and I was just able to understand exactly what I wanted. I felt very in touch with my mind and body. It was a great experience. Felt like a meditative type of experience, very calming. And so that was day 3, and eventually I brought that to an end with, if you guys were curious about what I ended my fast with, it is pretty anticlimactic, and I will tell you why. But first, here is a video of me breaking my fast. I need to break this fast, and so here's what we're breaking it with. Unsalted chicken bone broth. Cheers. Oh, that's so bad. That's awful. That's god awful. Holy cow. Oh. It's disgusting. That is like the worst thing I've ever tried before. Oh my gosh. But apparently it's like a good way to start it. As you can see, bone broth, very, very disgusting. That was genuinely one of the worst things I ever tasted. I think partially because my taste buds had just turned off during that time. The reason being is because after it gets to a point that your body just accepts the fact that it's not getting any more food, and so it just turns off mechanisms that are aiding in your digestive process. And that brings me to my next point on how important it is to break your fast correctly. This is one of the most important parts, and the way that you should break your fast is not by eating a huge filling meal and just diving into all the things that you've been craving during that fast. The way that you should actually break your fast is by warming up your body. And so you have to start with something that's easily digestible, something that isn't extremely calorie dense, because that will make you bloated. I want to tell a story of my first time. So a day before my 72-hour water fast, I tried fasting just for 18 hours to warm myself up. And after those 18 hours, I finished my meal with a huge 1,600 calorie, 150 gram protein, extremely dense meal. And I downed it within an hour because I was so hungry. And when I tell you that my stomach has never felt more bloated, it felt like it was going to explode. I couldn't even sit down because it hurt so much. I literally had to go on a walk, and I did not stop walking for a whole hour because that's how bloated I was. It is extremely uncomfortable. I definitely tell you, if you're breaking your fast, don't just dive right in. It was the worst thing I could have done. And so the second time when I actually did my 72-hour fast, I ended it with bone broth and the most disgusting form, unsalted chicken bone broth. That was horrible. And then after that, once my body had kind of warmed up, I went in with a relatively lean food choice, tacos. Here we go. Oh my gosh, that's so good. I mean, it could be worse. It could have been worse. That's all I'll say. And so after that, I mean, the tacos felt great. I felt amazing. I slept amazing that night. And yeah, it was great from there. And so you may be asking, what have you been doing since then? Just eating like normally? No. I have still been intermittent fasting since then. I have been doing what's called an 18-6 intermittent water fast. That means that I only eat in a period of 6 hours a day. I have a 6-hour eating window that I eat. For me, that is between 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. I try to go to the gym at 12. I haven't gone to the gym at 12 one single time. I constantly go to the gym around 2 to 3. So I usually get back around 4 to 5, and I don't end up eating until 6. So I only eat one meal a day. So I'm on that OMAD right now. But if I could say anything, I'd probably say I'm still intermittent fasting. And the thing with fasting, and another misconception about fasting, is that fasting is like strict. It's meant to be like strict. Like, fasting does not mean that you I guess this isn't a misconception, but it's something that I really want to emphasize, and that is that fasting has to be strict. The restrictions that you put on yourself can be lenient, but the whole point of fasting means that you cannot have a single calorie during that fast. Not a single calorie. Okay, I'll correct myself and say that you can't have any more than 40 calories during that fast. The reason I cap it at that is because there are some things like black coffee or electrolytes that have a few calories that will not increase your blood sugar, will not introduce glucose in your system, and will maintain the fast and all of the benefits of the fast. But you cannot have a snack. You cannot have like a granola bar or like a couple fruit snacks or anything like that during the fast. You have to be extremely strict. And the reason being is because as soon as you introduce glucose into your system, your body is no longer running on ketones. It increases your blood sugar, your insulin increases, and what insulin does is not only regulate blood sugar, but it tells your body to start storing fat, stop burning fats, and start storing foods as fats. So, why do I say that? Well, when I talk about intermittent fasting, and specifically like an 18-6 fast where you only eat between 2 and 8, you may think, that's really not that bad. I only eat lunch and dinner anyways. I don't really even like breakfast. If you are eating outside of that window, that is considered breaking the fast. That is not fasting. And the reason you have to be so strict with it is because any time that your blood sugar increases and your insulin spikes, you are not fasted. Okay? And it seems like I am being a little too over-exaggerated about this, and you may be wondering, why do I care so much? And the reason I care so much is because we as a society have been conditioned, especially here in the United States, we have been conditioned that we need to be eating 3 meals a day, or that it's normal to be eating 3 meals a day, or that it's normal to be eating all throughout your day, because we have fast food chains and the most accessible food that we've ever had in the history of human beings today. And so we're conditioned to think that we should always be eating, but that is not the case. We did not evolve from other humans in the past, depending on what you believe, other organisms in the past to eat throughout the day. If you think about it, our primal ancestors would only eat one meal every couple of days. They would probably go a few days without eating, and then they would eat a huge meal all at once. And so, why is this something that I'm stressing so much? And the reason I'm stressing is this idea that we need to be eating all the time is extremely unhealthy for our bodies, and will it significantly increase your chance of having heart problems and diabetes as we grow older. Okay? And why do I say that? Well, the first thing, let's just start with the number one cause of death among adults among the adult population in the United States, and that is heart disease and type 2 diabetes. Okay? And so why is intermittent fasting going to cure that? Well, let's talk about why eating throughout the day is extremely harmful. Eating throughout the day means that your blood sugar never has the chance to decrease, which means your insulin is always in your bloodstream and never has the chance to decrease, and you develop insulin resistance. Think about it. Let's say you eat a meal. It takes 4 to 6 hours for your insulin levels to actually go down. You eat a meal 2 hours after, you eat a snack 2 hours after that, and then after 2 hours after that, you have another meal, and then you snack for a couple hours, and then you have another meal. Your blood sugar was high throughout that whole time. Your insulin was in your system throughout the whole time. And what happens when you overuse any sort of drug? You develop a tolerance, and it is the exact same with insulin. Insulin, if it is always in your bloodstream, it will become inefficient. It will not be as good at delivering glucose into your cells and fueling your body. And in doing so, you will have a higher blood sugar. You will have high blood sugar. And what is high blood sugar? Well, let's think about it. Diabetes. If you have diabetes, that means you can't control your blood sugar. And so the doctor has to actually give you insulin or give you metformin or glipizide or other different types of drugs, prescription drugs, to regulate your blood sugar, because your body cannot itself control it because your insulin has become resistant. How do you prevent insulin resistance? Fasting windows. You allow your insulin to decrease. You do not have insulin in your system at all times. And it doesn't have to be crazy. You can start with a 12-12 intermittent fast, only having a 12-hour eating window. But if you say your eating window is from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., that means when you step outside your room and there's those crumble cookies that are on the counter, you cannot just eat those crumble cookies at 9 p.m. and completely spike your insulin and break that intermittent fast. 12-12 should be so doable. It should be something that you can definitely do to help your insulin create at least 12 hours. If you sleep, and I know sleep has gotten a lot less common, or it's decreased just with the increase of social media, but if you sleep 8 hours, that means you only have 4 waking hours where you don't have to eat 2 at the beginning, 2 at the end. That's doable. But most people, let's say you're only sleeping 5 hours, and you're eating throughout that whole time, your insulin literally never goes down, and you will be highly, highly susceptible to heart problems and diabetes. And how does diabetes relate to heart problems? Well, high blood sugar and glucose in your bloodstream is extremely dangerous in prolonged periods because it creates this process called glycation, which damages your arteries. It stiffens your arteries. It makes you more susceptible to blood pressure, to blood clots, and stiffening of the arteries in the heart is what leads to congestive heart failure, chronic heart disease, and it also has very, very harsh problems on your nerve endings, aka diabetic neuropathy, your kidneys, nephropathy, your eyes, creating cataracts, retinopathy. So if I could say anything, it is so important. Intermittent fasting will actually make you much less susceptible to heart disease and diabetes and complications of diabetes. But what about cancer? Doesn't cancer kill a lot of people? Well, I'm glad that you asked that question, because fasting, and specifically more intense fasting, anywhere upwards of 18 hours plus, we'll say 16 hours and plus, but it really varies. Anything after 16 hours of fasting with absolutely 0 calories, that is when your glycogen storages start to deplete. That is when you start digging into your fat and turning them into ketones. And it is also at that point where your body accepts, hey, we are not getting food. We need to be more efficient. And one process that your body goes through to create that efficiency is the process of autophagy. Autophagy means self-eating. What self-eating means on a physiological level in the process of autophagy itself is that your body starts going through all of the inefficient cells in your body, all of the damaged proteins, the old and damaged organelles in all of your cells, and it starts eating and recycling those cells and replacing them with more efficient ones, which is amazing. You start feeling better, you start having more efficient cells. It's amazing. And what does this have to do with cancer, you may ask? Well, what is cancer? Cancer is oftentimes caused by the evasion of apoptosis. What is apoptosis? Apoptosis is an evolved mechanism in your body, and what apoptosis means on a biological level standpoint is programmed cell death. It is when it is your body killing its own cells that are damaged and inefficient and harmful because it can't be in your system anymore because they are ineffective. So you have mechanisms and you have other cells that kill your cells to basically ensure that these cells do not spread because they are harmful. What does autophagy have to do with apoptosis? What does apoptosis have to do with cancer? Well, when your cells, and you have old and damaged cells, the cells that actually regulate apoptosis and ensure that they catch all of the harmful cells, when you have damaged organelles, proteins, cells like that, your cells are more likely, especially the harmful cells, are more likely to evade and skip and dodge apoptosis and get around apoptosis, skipping programmed cell death. And when cells evade apoptosis, that is when they're susceptible to just multiplying and increasing and spreading all throughout your body. And when you think of cancer, that is exactly what cancer is. It is harmful cells spreading at an uncontrollably fast pace, multiplying and spreading throughout the body. Cancer metastasizes and spreads throughout the body. And how does autophagy prevent that and decrease your risk of getting cancer? Well, autophagy recycles all of your old and damaged proteins and replaces it with more new and efficient ones, so you are much, much, much less likely to have harmful cells that are not killed and that do not evade apoptosis. And it is crazy, just by fasting for upwards of 16 hours. The longer that you fast after that, the deeper into autophagy your body goes. It is able to fully cleanse your entire body. It is an extremely healing process to your body, and your body should be going through autophagy at least once per month. And so you should at least intermittent fast. I would recommend, I'm not going to recommend anything because I'm just learning about this, but I know for myself, I'm going to be doing a 3-day water fast at least once a month moving forward. So I'm excited for that to come, but specifically doing fasting is so healthy for your body, and it will trigger evolutionary mechanisms that we have evolved from our primal ancestors that were hunter-gatherers to keep our body clean and surviving. And that fast was just absolutely incredible. I hope to get more extreme with that, maybe a 7-day water fast. We'll see. I mean, at the end of the 3 days, I could have went one more, but I think the cravings got the better of me. Plus, I didn't want to take it too far just because I had been training somewhat hard. But yeah, that's all I have to say on fasting, and I recommend that you do that. And if you don't, at least you have a better understanding of what is going on a physiological level inside of your body when you eat and when you don't eat. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I definitely enjoyed creating it. I hope you guys take something away from it. If you did and you made it this far, go ahead and hit that like, comment, subscribe, and turn on post notifications, because we are going to be creating a lot more content to come. We'll see what that looks like. I do have this Mind and Body 30 idea that I'm working on right now, and I'm building out, and maybe I can help some of you guys get on your own. But it has been a journey in the last week or two since moving out to Austin, and I think we got some momentum building. So stay tuned for content to come. I'm going to be talking about some other things as well, just some of my own findings, but this was the one that I wanted to talk about the most. So anyways, that is it for this video. I will catch you in the next one. Peace.